Okay, your calls are coming up. I'm sure they're going to be all over the map. I would ask listeners to try to talk about the Bankster takeover. That's what we're discussing right now. If that's not what you want to talk about, Bankstergate, then please let John Harmon know, and I'll go to you later after Webster Tarpley leaves us. But Kyle, Billy, Dave, Jacob, and others, or if you want to call in about the Bankster criminal activities and how we stop them, 1-800-259-9231. We're going back to Webster Tarpley in just a moment. Geithner's been caught red-handed in criminal activity, but we can't just let him be a scapegoat. It is the entire system. We're going to go back to Tarpley here in one moment. First, I want to thank some of the sponsors that have made today's radio broadcast possible. First off, I want to tell you about MySolarBackup.com. It is so important for everybody to move towards becoming at least somewhat self-sufficient and truly sustainable. And this is a great solar-powered unit. You can run your whole house off a bunch of them, but it can run larger appliances by itself. It's a great little solar panel, the little battery system, and a controller. Just a wonderful system. You can find out more at MySolarBackup.com. Banners up on Infowars.com. Again, that's MySolarBackup.com, or give them a call at 877-327-0365. The government doesn't own the sun yet, ladies and gentlemen, and it's now time to get involved in systems and to start training yourself to be more and more self-sufficient. Great systems, great for camping as well. 877-327-0365, 877-327-0365, or MySolarBackup.com. Continuing with sponsors that made today's show possible. Front Sight. This is Alex Jones. Have you heard of the Millionaire Patriot? He has a free handgun and 5 days of free firearms training for you. You can attend 5 days of world-class gun training at Front Sight's Firearms Training Institute and secure a 30-state concealed weapons permit, all for pennies on the dollar. Plus, if you act fast, the Millionaire Patriot will give you a free Springfield Armory XT pistol and the caliber of your choice. I believe now is the time for you and your family to be armed and trained to levels that exceed law enforcement military standards. Front Sight provides such training without any boot camp mentality or drill instructor attitudes, and the Millionaire Patriot is paying his own money out to get this training. This is real. Thousands have already taken advantage of this, and so should you. Don't miss out. Go to FrontSight.com today. That's one word, FrontSight.com. Secure a Front Sight defensive handgun course plus 30 state concealed weapons permit for pennies on the dollar and get your free handgun. That's FrontSight.com. Go to FrontSight.com and get your free gun. Okay, going back to Webster Griffin Tarpley. Webster is really saying nothing new here. He's saying what he said in my film, Fall of the Republic, and the Obama deception. He's going off the facts, and it's now being proven even by the mainstream. So, Webster, I want to move quickly now just to bullet points, picking your brain here. Obviously, we need to have a special prosecutor, but not just Congress. We want grand juries at the state level to indict. We want legislatures that have had their pension funds and other systems defrauded by this who have standing to take action. We need private suits. It is lawsuits that have been bringing out the secret AIG and Goldman Sachs documents where they're engaged in fraud and premeditated plans to blow out their competition and make hundreds of billions of dollars off the scam in McClatchy newspapers. This is all starting to come out, but the public doesn't have a great knowledge. They just know they're being robbed. And then I add the point that it's the banks that run all our major cities that are lobbying for land grabs and more taxes and surveillance. It's the banks that fund the military-industrial complex. It's the banks that are pushing the global Copenhagen tax, where we'll pay money directly to them. I mean, they literally are attempting a global takeover with this wall of fiat currency, 1.5 quadrillion that you talk about, or 1,500 trillion. They are being exposed. They are in trouble. But let's go over more of their crimes, what they've really done, and your expertise in going after these people, the best ways for people to call for their indictments and other crimes they've committed so that the public at large is aware, so they can be pushed into the mainstream media.
Well, let's also add another name to our list, right? Because so far we've talked about Hank Paulson. That was the Bush Goldman Sachs Secretary of the Treasury. We're obviously focusing on Geithner, who went from the New York Fed, the flagship of the Federal Reserve System, really the heart of it in terms of policy. But let's also add Sheila Baird of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Now, this woman is also part of the bailout, right? The bailout comes from the Federal Reserve under Bernanke. It comes from the Treasury under Paulson and Geithner. But then Sheila Baird is the head of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Now, she did a couple of things. We've been talking about how sometimes institutions that are viable in themselves are fed into other bankrupt institutions that are politically better connected. The leading example of this is Washington Mutual, and this was the largest savings bank left in the United States that was simply declared bankrupt by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and then fed into J.P. Morgan Chase in order to prop them up. In other words, every indication I have is that WAMU, Washington Mutual, was not bankrupt, but of course J.P. Morgan was because of derivatives. J.P. Morgan is the biggest derivatives black hole in the universe. So this WAMU was seized and fed in, and the people who had that stock were completely destroyed in the process. So that's one thing that we want to investigate.
Yeah, they didn't pay the people off from that. They seized it with real assets, and then the government regulators, run by the J.P. Morgan Chase / Goldman Sachs pirate crew, they kept the money and then didn't, even with taxpayer money, pay back the people they'd robbed.
Exactly. Now, you talked about Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns was also fed into J.P. Morgan. I think Bear Stearns really was bankrupt several times over with derivatives. Same story for Lehman Brothers, which was then allowed to go bankrupt completely. But Washington Mutual is a really egregious case because it's not clear that they were bankrupt at all. They were probably viable, and they were fed into J.P. Morgan to give J.P. Morgan all of those deposits that they could use to offset some of their toxic derivatives in the long run. Now, the other big thing that Sheila Baird does do or doesn't do at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation is the following. According to the banking laws of the United States, the big banks in Wall Street are bankrupt several times over. That means J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, a couple of others, right? Bank of New York Mellon. The top 6 or 7 are unquestionably bankrupt. Now, every Friday, you can pick up an AP wire that says, today the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation shut down the corner bank of Podunk Center in some state, some little bank that nobody's ever heard of with a few $100 million of deposits or assets. The problem is that every Friday we are reminded that Sheila Baird is guilty of a criminal conspiracy not to shut down the zombie banks, because that's what these things are. The big Wall Street banks are zombie banks, and what I mean by that is this. We were told when the bailout and the TARP went through that if you bailed out Wall Street, that would help Main Street. If you kept the Wall Street banks going, that would mean abundant credit would flow to companies, to industry.
But they haven't been loaning. By design, they've been shutting down Main Street so they can buy it up.
Right. So what we've got is the U.S. taxpayer is now funding zombie banks. What do zombie banks do? Well, you may have noticed, first of all, that the price of gasoline has gone up about $1 per gallon in the last 12 months.
And you predicted that a year ago.
And what is that? That is simply the comeback of Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, who bid that up to, almost $5 a gallon or so back in the summer of 2008. Then they had to sell it off when they were threatened by bankruptcy, and now they're bidding that up again. So the thanks you get from Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley for saving them is that they are now bidding up the price of gasoline, and they will bid that up as high as they can. So that's one thing they do. Parasitical speculation in the things that you need for your daily life. The second thing, of course, they do is they clip you. They clip you with late fees, deposit fees,
30% credit card rates,
right,
loan sharking. But Webster, worse than that, they're now lobbying the government to levy all these new taxes on an already broke back country to then pay them even more money so the government can, quote, pay off debts to central banks. We're now hearing that the big banks, just last week I saw Paulson come out in the news. I saw who was the other big one? I saw Rubin come out and call for it. A bunch of others call for higher taxes to pay off debt, much of which is debt accrued by giving them all this money. So they're in there running the government to now rape us financially through taxes.
Exactly, and this is the whole secret of Obama. About 1 year ago right now, Obama met with the editorial board of the Washington Post, and it's something that I talk about in Surviving the Cataclysm. Obama said, well, I ran on hope and change, but now I have to change. I have to abandon those things. Now it's going to be sacrifice and responsibility. Wait a minute. Wall Street has just gotten, 25 trillion, whatever it is, 27 trillion, and now it's time for sacrifice and responsibility for the American people, exhausted, depleted, with our living standard cut already by 2/3. If you look at what Obama wants to do with Social Security and indeed his health care plan, these are bailouts in disguise. These are bailouts to bail out bankrupt insurance companies, all the insurance companies.
Themselves owned by banks. And let me add this.